now a story about enthusiasm, about dedication, about focus, about a couple working together, and about science fiction. So lots of my favourite topics and subjects all wrapped up into one. We are talking the Museum of Classic Sci-Fi. It's in Allendale town. It's in Northumberland. Osborne House, I think, is the proper address. And one man's behind it with his wife, Lisa, and he joins us now. It's Mr. Neil Cole. Good morning, Neil, art teacher, but also the man who runs this museum, creator of it, or co-creator. Good morning, Neil.
Oh, good morning. Thank you ever so much for having me on. This is incredibly kind of you. It's very, very, very early, and I'm teaching in a couple of hours, but hey, it's amazing. Thank you.
I did wonder why you were still up at this hour, and I appreciate your kind of dedication to talk to us, mate. You really appreciate it. So let's start. Before I get on to the problems you might be facing at the moment with your Dalek in the shed outside, how long have you been working on this brilliant-sounding museum? Because it's a labour of love, this, isn't it?
Yeah, about 5 years ago, we moved to this tiny little village, and we saw this Georgian house, which all I can say is, if you watched The Haunting of Hill House on Netflix, it makes it look like it makes it look like a luxury apartment when we turned up.
Oh dear!
It was really, it was a really scary looking place, and it had been neglected for decades, probably 100 years of neglect, and not having a lot of money, but a lot of sort of gumption. I thought that cellar, that could just house this collection that I'd been putting together for probably 20 years. And I always wanted to. I loved ghost trains as a kid. I went to the Doctor Who exhibition in Blackpool in 1975, and it never left me.
Yeah.
And I just always had this desire. I love those things where you go into a place and you're transported just for a little. Even as an adult, you just leave the real world just for a little bit. And so it came from that early childhood experience, and then just the chance to get this old house. That's where it all started from.
So, okay, that's a perfect meeting and matching of two things. It sounds like you had a huge amount of work to do there, Neil.
Yeah, we did. I mean, the reason we got it so cheap, and we really did get it cheap, but the reason we did was because of that. I mean, would I do it? People keep saying, would you do it again? Well, of course I would, but it's been 5 years of the bottom floor. Yeah, the water was coming in. It's a half underground. It's a ground floor at the front, and in the back it goes actually into the ground itself. So we had water coming in the back, in the front, and we just at times you just did not know where the water was coming from, and we had such help. There was a lovely guy called David Stevens who lost his son, who was a huge Doctor Who fan a few years back, and he suddenly turned up at the door one night from Somerset. He drove all the way up, and he said, "Neil, I'm coming here to help you with your drainage. I can see that you're not a builder," and we had that sort of help and love, because people could see this sort of idiot online. It was, dead keen, learning stonework from scratch kind of thing. It's just been a journey.
But by the same time, you and your wife, I presume, are both working. You're an art teacher. You've got a proper job as well.
Yeah, that's the incredible thing. Yeah, I mean, my wife is a psychotherapist. She has a little business here. She deals with trauma and all sorts of things. And then I'm an art teacher, and I make props at school. I work with 9 to 13-year-olds. So we built a couple of Daleks, accurate ones, at school, and we're building Ben Grimm at the minute, a life-size Ben Grimm from The Thing.
Oh, brilliant. From the Fantastic Four, yes.
Yeah. I just thought, I always think, I always want to do things that, wouldn't it be nice? What would it be like if you saw Ben Grimm for real? What would it be like? And not just the movie one, who's a bit small, really. And let's do them big, because you've got a space, and it's nice for the kids to get involved in a big sculpting project like that. So it's a lot. Yeah, I've worked weekends, evenings. I've got 2 children as well, both who are autistic, believe it or not.
Oh wow.
I know, it's been... it's just
you like a challenge, don't you, Neil? You and your wife, Lisa. You like a challenge.
Yeah, well, life would be boring otherwise, wouldn't it?
Now, you mentioned that you've been collecting this stuff for years. What kind of things have you got on display in the museum? Because I think you open, is it 3 days a week at the moment?
4 days a week.
Okay.
Again, it's a family affair. I teach Tuesday. I dropped a day. My wife made me drop a day, and my head teacher at school was amazing. He, unlike some bosses, who would sort of say, "No, you must devote your life completely," he said, "No, this is a life passion, and I'm going to support you." And it was brilliant, And so I work Saturdays and Mondays. Then my wife does her paperwork for the week on the Friday, and then my father-in-law gives us all the day off on the Sunday. So that's how it. That's how it works.
Okay, so you're in, I've mentioned, Allendale town. It's called Osborne House.
Yeah.
When did you actually open properly? When was your inaugural day, Neil?
We opened October the 20th, and I just on the off chance, I always wanted John Levine from Doctor Who. Do you remember John Levine? He was Sergeant Benton.
Oh, yes, I do. As soon as you say the character name, I do remember him.
Yeah, and we got in touch with with John. I'd seen how sort of wonderful he was with people now, and we got him to come along, and that was amazing because my daughter and I, we watched classic Doctor Who a lot. We love John Pertwee, and we've just been watching the Three Doctors where you have the Gel Guards and Omega and stuff, and John gets in uniform in my kitchen, not actually getting in front of me in my kitchen.
No.
But John gets changed, calls my daughter down and introduces him, says, bring Matilda down, and it's Sergeant Benton here, Matilda, I've seen off the Gel Guards, had just been dropped off by the doctor, and let's watch some Doctor Who together. And they sat together on the settee watching Doctor Who. I mean, I just thought, it doesn't get better than that,
Well, then, of course, I think you got involved in a project again with your students, and you built this wonderful... I've seen a photograph in, I think it was the iPaper this week, this wonderful-looking Dalek in his own little shed, but that's got you in a bit of bother. Is that right, Neil, or has that been resolved?
Yeah. No, it's not been resolved at all. Basically, the building's listed. And I built this Dalek at school. It was the second one I built at school. About 30 children from... I've run a Doctor Who club for years, we built this Dalek. There comes a time when these things have to move on. So we thought we're perfect for outside the museum. Bottom line, we needed a house for it quick, so we didn't think we needed planning permission for a shed. And we wanted to always make the museum discreet. In terms of it is a small country village. Yeah. We didn't want it, it's a bit like John Wyndham, it's like the Triffids, not the Triffids, like the Midwich Cuckoos, it's a little village, and we didn't want it to stand out. We were trying to be very thoughtful for everybody else, because we knew one or two people wouldn't like looking at a Dalek every day. Most people love it, though, absolutely love it.
Of course.
So we had a bespoke shed built, so it all shuts up. You know what I mean? So it's not just when it's closed, you wouldn't even know it's there.
So basically, it's like the kind of thing you'd have as a summer house without windows. You put your garden tools in. You might put
exactly
almost like a log store, one of those kind of sheds.
Absolutely. And here's the other thing, Paul. The listed buildings, they sort of conservation, listed planning people. They sort of, for me, they've got like a Georgian chocolate box version of history. It's like our cellar was probably a blacksmith's, we think it was a farrier's. And I was sort of like, well, you're telling me they wouldn't have a wooden building outside? Blacksmiths wouldn't have a log shed, like you're saying?
Or back in the day, chicken coops or anything. They were much. They were houses where people worked, but also they worked and lived.
That's right, and that's what I've done. That's my whole point, is that we took this house, which, believe you me, it had no love at all. It really wasn't. No fault of the people living there, because a lot of them had been rented out, so people didn't have the money to put it in. You needed to own and love it. Do you know what I mean?
Sure.
And we've taken it back to what the houses were used for. That was a family living upstairs, and then a business. And there's not enough horses anymore, sadly, to run a farrier's. Cars are here, we're in the 21st century, and all we've done is taken it into the 21st century. And it's almost like some of the people in the historical, building department, they just don't realise it has to be fit for purpose now. You can't run a business from 1700. We are in the 21st century, and that's one of the arguments I'm trying to say.
But also, it's not like you've got something outside like petrol pumps or what you've got outside is an attractive-looking wooden shed. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen the pictures of it, but it really. Honestly, we tucked it behind the main staircase so that when you're in the actual marketplace, which is where most people are, you can't actually see it. So it's a very small minority. Bottom line is a small minority have kicked off the planning investigation, which never needed to happen. And of course, once you're in that system, it's like a Kafka novel. It's like Terry Gilliam's Brazil. Once you're in the system, it just starts to steamroller away.
I must say, this is striking on a much more minor level. Many years ago, I lived in a listed building down in West Sussex, and my wife and daughters, they had two, I loved them as well, two big standard poodles. We wanted to get a dog flat for them. Because it was a listed building, although you couldn't see it from the main road, and the back of the house had been built on anyway in Edwardian times, so it wasn't part of the original Georgian house. We had to have two site meetings. At one of them, 6 people turned up. And I'm thinking, this is for a dog flat. What's going on here?
Yeah, it's typical. We've now got to save the Dalek petition going.
Hey!
It's Allendale. Yeah, I know. Do you know what it is? Do you know It's a Wonderful Life with James Stewart?
Of course, Frank Capra's finest hour.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly, I've been so low. Initially, last week I was teaching when I got the message that all this was going to have to go. And I've spent, honestly, if you give me, I can send you pictures. it's a beautiful little museum. I'm not, it really is.
I have been looking at it online, and it is an absolute gem, I must say, folks.
Yeah, and it's totally unique. It's the largest collection of classic Doctor Who surviving props, which the BBC, just did not look after. I mean, I'd followed them around the country, and because I'm lucky, I can sculpt. I was able to take ones that would have possibly gone in the bin. There's a pterodactyl, for example, is one of my shining pieces, and it's the only one now in the UK. It's the only one. And I've resculpted the head, I've repaired the arms.
Well, two of my younger brothers were extras on Doctor Who back in the 80s, and they nicked plastic brains with wires from them. They had them for the longest time. I wish if we could find them, I'll post them to you. I think they've long gone, sadly.
Bless you. Oh,
but
yeah.
What's happening though, Neil, with the planning permission? I mean, if you lose this, what might it mean? Where would the Dalek go? Would you have to close, for example?
Well, I'll tell you what. Well, the thing is, we're thinking long and hard about this. Part of the problem is, obviously, we've got people from the online world now come from out of area. That's half of the thing. It's a rural economy. We need people to come in to the village, because otherwise little villages start to die off.
And you must be attracting hundreds and hundreds of visitors.
We've had since October, bearing in mind it's winter and it's a cold, it's the North Pennines, we've had over 900 people in. And most of them, we've had people travel from London, from Scotland. At the weekend, nobody this weekend's come from the village now.
Right.
And they all go into the village and support the pubs and the coffee shops, and they all just help keep the village going and ticking over. I mean, the village itself is so behind it. And what we've done is, if the Dalek shed has to go, I'm going to weatherproof the Dalek. This is one plan. And we're literally going to move him around the village. The local pub, the Golden Lion, they want it. The coffee shop wants it. And the post office. So it's basically going to be, the Dalek's going to move around the village. Yeah. Oh, we've got scarecrows coming up everywhere now with the Save the Allen Dalek, right? Bear in mind, somebody sabotaged the sign. So it says Allendale. It says Allen Dalek, not Allendale now. And then we've got Daleks appearing. Bearing in mind, this is it's a bit like a sci-fi novel in itself. It's in the remote.
Sure.
It's quite, so there's Daleks appearing.
Okay, and you mentioned the online. It's a brilliant story. You mentioned the online petition. How can people get involved? I mean, first of all, where can people find you online? I presume. I just looked up the Museum of Classic Sci-Fi in Northumberland and found you.
Yeah, if you can do that, the best one is my Facebook page, which is Neil Cole's Adventures in Classic Sci-Fi.
And that's Neil, N-E-I-L, isn't it? N-E-I-L.
Yeah, N-E-I-L-C-O-L-E. If you put in Neil Cole and Classic Science Fiction, it should come. That's like a weekly blog, which I've done since day one. I wasn't on Facebook at all, and my dear lady said, Neil, you need to do this, and call it after, she said, I don't call it Neil bloody Cole, She went, no, call it personified, give it an identity, and then so people know who you are. And then just go, and it's just built. I think people have just seen a crazy man feverishly working away.
Okay, and when might there be a kind of when's an end date for this planning wrangle? Do you think, Neil? Finally.
Well, last week I was given 14 days out the blue. 14 days, just it's really impersonal letter. Just get it shifted. And we also had a car, what we called the Volvardis, which a guy had driven all the way around Europe. Yeah. It's a Volvo with a TARDIS on the back.
Of course.
Custom build. Yeah. And it was going to the great scrapyard in the sky. And he said, look, I've raised all this money for Mind. And, of course, with Lisa doing mental health work and various things, we really want to support. He said, look, would it be good here? So he donated the car. And, of course, that's the same whingers who didn't like the Dalek, don't like that. But we've got around that. But... So I don't know why. Sorry, I'm off on a tangent on this.
No, I was just asking when the date was going. You said they were given 2 weeks last week. So what? First week in February. Week.
So we're looking at it's next week, isn't it? It's going to be but we've got literally talk of a human chain. We've got human wall around the Dalek. There's people saying we'll bring trailers down and we'll just cart it around the village with the Doctor Who theme blasting.
I think you should be elected chair of the parish council.
Well, do you know what it is? I'm being really serious here. The majority of the parish council are wonderful.
Yeah.
A small minority, I do question the fitness of their decision, because this has brought in money at a time of austerity. There's big stuff going on. We just don't need. It causes no harm. Yeah. No harm to anyone. And of course, it's this crazy world, isn't it, where you trigger a process off, and then you get the weight of this rule-making little inner society, and they don't seem to look at the human beings involved.
Well, I tell you what I'd like to do, Neil. I tell you what I'd like to do is, because I know you've got work looming and stuff, can we keep in touch with you? Maybe give you a call next week or the week after to find out how things are going?
Absolutely.
Well,
Yeah,
keep in
that'd be
touch, mate.
lovely,
And listen,
Paul.
love to
I
Lisa and your
appreciate it.
family and your family as well. And good luck with it. And it's the Museum of Classic Sci-Fi, Allendale Town, Northumberland, and it's Osborne House. Is that right?
Yeah, at Osborne House, and it's Neil, and on Facebook, Neil Cole's Adventures in Classic Sci-Fi Museum. And I'm sure now, to be honest, it's gone it's gone everywhere. If you put in Neil Cole, Allendale, Dalek, you're going to see something.
Brilliant stuff, mate.
Quickly.
You've been a great guest. We'll talk again in a week or so, okay?
Oh, bless you, Paul. Thank you for having me.
That's the
Really,
deal.
seriously.
Have a wonderful day, and then we'll talk again. It's Talk Radio. It's 3:47. At last, somebody who talks even more than me on the show. Talk Radio coming up. Musical birthday.